Hi, this is George from the Return of the King channel. This video is especially for my core audience, my regular viewers, those of you who've been with me since around 2020. The rapture itself is patterned after a Jewish wedding. A Jewish wedding lasted 7 days. Our wedding with Christ will last 7 years. Now, in a Jewish wedding, there was a period of time when no one knew the exact day or hour of the wedding, not even the groom's father. Here's how it worked. Once the couple was betrothed, they were legally married. The groom would then go to his father's house and build an addition for himself and his bride. It usually takes 1 to 2 years. It's been around 2,000 years since Christ's death and resurrection. Only after the addition was finished would the father give the go-ahead. That's when the date could be set. The Bible reflects this in the parable of the 10 virgins. In that story, everyone knows the day the groom is coming, the bride and the bridesmaids included. They even know roughly when because they know he's late. Normally, he would arrive around sunset, but in that parable, he doesn't arrive until midnight. Matthew 24:36, "No one knows the day or the hour," is one of the most distorted and misused verses in all of Scripture. It doesn't mean we'll never know the day. It simply means that the setting of the day belongs to the Father. Nothing more, nothing less. When I first started out, my plan was simply to trust God and see where this would lead. It's only in these last few weeks that everything has come to be fully understood. In this video, I'm going to talk about 6 dreams that happened in 2020. I had 4 of them and my son had 2. What's amazing is that 4 of those dreams came on the very same night, 2 for him and 2 for me. All of them happened in 2020, 5 years ago. And in the Bible, 5 is the number of grace. At the rapture, the age of grace will come to an end. These dreams, as a whole, points to the Feast of Trumpets. On today's Jewish calendar, it begins at sunset on September 22nd and ends at sunset on September 24th. Now, originally in the Bible, it was just 1 day, but during the diaspora, when the Jewish people were scattered far from Jerusalem, it was stretched to 2 days. The reason was simple. When the crescent moon was sighted in Jerusalem, it could take a day for the message to reach those who live far away. So the feast became a 2-day celebration, and that tradition is still followed today. In Joshua's vision, Jesus said, "On the 23rd and 24th of September 2025, I will come to take my church." Those dates line up exactly with today's Jewish calendar. And just the same, September 15th falls on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the day of Christ's return. Then Jesus said, "On the 15th of September 2032, I will return to earth as king." Let's start by looking at the first dream. On September 29th, 2020, I published a video titled, "2020 Rapture, Almost Home." The dream I'm about to share came right after I prayed, "Lord, if I don't get something from you soon, I'm going to quit doing these videos." It had been 3 years since the Revelation 12 sign, and we were still here. Honestly, I was burnt out. I told God, if you want me to keep going, I need something that shows me I'm on the right track. That night, September 22nd, 2020, at 4 a.m., I had this dream. Exactly 5 years to the start of the Feast of Trumpets 2025. A couple of weeks ago, I felt prompted to go back and find the exact date. I had forgotten when the dream had occurred. Suddenly, pieces of the dream that had always been a mystery started to fall into place. Every single detail of this dream matters. It confirms the year of Jubilee, and it points to the Feast of Trumpets as the Feast of the Rapture. In the dream, I was running a marathon, 26.2 miles. That number has meaning. 26 is the numerical value of the name of God in Hebrew, YHWH, Yahweh. At the end of the race, 2 groups meet with God, the dead in Christ and those of us who are alive and remain. The race was set in Egypt. Jesus told Joshua there would be 77 years to the Exodus. He used that word, but he was talking about the rapture. The Jubilee is 7 times 7 years, and then on the 50th year is the Jubilee. 2025 is a Jubilee year. The marathon took place near the pyramids. I wasn't running alone. I was with a Christian coworker named Steve. That name plays an important role in the credibility of this dream. When the dream begins, I was in the desert just south of the pyramids. Steve and I were nearing the end of the race, and I was ready to make the final push to finish strong. But when I looked at my sport watch, the one that carried the race map, it wasn't working. I spent a great deal of time trying to fix it, but nothing worked. I finally broke away from Steve and followed other runners into the city as we headed north. But once we got into the city, nothing was blocked off for the race. Without a map, you'd get lost, and I did. Inside the city, the race wound back and forth. Nothing was straight. I eventually came across a map posted on a sign. It had the usual marker, "You are here, and the finish is here." But the strange part was that the rest of the course formed a sharp V shape, and that's where the dream ended. I woke up knowing the V was symbolic, but I didn't know of what. At the time, I had read Tom Horn's book, Zenith 2016, and understood some of the connections between Egypt, America, and the coming of the Antichrist. But the dream itself, I had no idea what it meant. Over the years, God slowly revealed the meaning and timing, and just in the last few days, more has been revealed. So let's talk about that V. It had always been the biggest mystery. Why was the last section of the race shaped like a V? Why was I at this specific point on it? I speculated about it in my earlier videos, and someone commented that it reminded them of the V in Pisces. As it turned out, they were right, but there's more to it. I was given that dream on September 22nd, 2020, and exactly 5 years later, to the day, the Feast of Trumpets begins at sunset on September 22nd. In Roman numerals, the value of V is 5. And in the dream, when I woke up, I found myself at the top of this side of the V. That's like a double confirmation. The V itself points to 5 years until we meet with God at the end of the race. Now remember, the marathon was 26.2 miles. 26 is the numerical value of the name of God, YHWH in Hebrew. And at the end of the race, just like at the rapture, there are two groups who meet with Jesus, the dead in Christ and those of us who are alive. At that moment, the age of grace comes to a close and God's focus turns back to Israel. The tribulation is the time of Jacob's trouble, not the church's. From the very day the dream was given, it's 5 years exactly to the start of the Feast of Trumpets. And biblically, 5 is the number of grace. The age of grace, the church age, ends at the rapture. But here's something else. I wasn't running alone. I was running with a Christian coworker named Steve. That name matters. The name Stephen comes from the Greek word Stephanos, which means crown. In Revelation 4:10, when believers stand before the throne, we cast our crowns, our Stephanos, before God. The V in the dream is also connected to the constellation of the Christian Pisces. I overlay the map on Pisces, and it seems to make sense. I then begin to read about these constellations in Joseph Zeiss's book, The Gospel in the Stars. The constellations of the rapture are Aries, in Hebrew Tale, which means the Lamb. The fish, the symbol of the Christian, and Cetus, the red dragon. The constellations of the tribulation are Taurus, Christ the judge, Gemini, the heavenly wedding, Christ and his bride. The bride in Revelation chapter 12 is the male child, and then Cancer representing heaven. And then I noticed that it takes the moon 7 days to travel from Aries to Cancer heaven. So I asked the Lord, does the moon in the constellation of Aries have anything to do with the rapture? That night I get a dream symbolizing our heavenly wedding. So yes, the moon in Aries will have something to do with the rapture. When I overlay the map, I place the finish to the race here on the ecliptic, the line you see here. The ecliptic is defined by the path of the sun. The planets and the moon stay very close to this line most of the time. So having the finish to the race here at this location makes sense. The eclipse of April 8th, 2024 appears exactly on the band of the fish at the finish line of the race. 3 days later, the moon will be in the constellation of the Lamb. At Mount Sinai, the Israelites were given 3 days to prepare to meet with God. You just had the Exodus, and now they will meet with God, a foreshadowing of the rapture. At this time, the interpretation of the dreams makes sense. It's close, but it's not the fulfillment of the dream. In late fall of 2024, I thought the journey was over. There's nothing more. The signs in the heavens are done. Now we just wait. Could be any day. While I was making what I thought would be my final video, I kept coming back to one particular day. I told myself, if something appears right here, at the intersection of the ecliptic and this band of the fish, then everything will make sense. On that day, Mars, the symbol of the red dragon, was in Gemini, the constellation tied to the wedding. Jupiter was between the horns of Taurus, and the moon was in Aries, fulfilling Dream 2. Saturn hovered over the dragon's tail, the tail that casts a third of the stars to Earth. And Venus sat atop the V on the right, just like in the dream. But for some reason, I couldn't see it. In my head, I expected it to show up somewhere else, here. I checked that day again and again, 6 or 7 times over 2 weeks, until finally, suddenly, I saw it. This is how the map I was shown in the dream connects with the constellation of Pisces. The V begins and ends at the heads of the 2 fish. The fulfillment is so exact that on the day before, Venus is just to the left of the top of the V, and on the day after, it's just to the right. That kind of precision tells me something. These 2 dreams, fulfilled on the very first day of the year that marks the Jubilee, confirm that this is indeed the year of Jubilee. The tribulation has to begin in a Jubilee year. And notice this, it's exactly 7 months to the Feast of Trumpets. In the Bible, 7 is the number of completion. In Revelation, Jesus calls himself the bright morning star. At the rapture, at the end of the 26.2-mile race, it is the bright morning star, Jesus himself, whom we will meet in the air. Above the dragon's tail is Saturn, symbolic of Satan and the angels who will be cast out of heaven and thrown to the earth. The moon, symbolic of Jesus, is in the constellation of the Lamb. That fulfills the second dream, the moon appearing in Aries. From there it takes the moon 7 days to reach Cancer, the sign of heaven. And just like a Jewish wedding lasts 7 days, so we will be with Christ in heaven for 7 years. Jupiter, representing Christ, is between the horns of Taurus, the judge, who will bring judgment to the earth after he takes his bride home. And Mars, the symbol of the red dragon, is in the constellation of the wedding. In Revelation chapter 12, the dragon tries to stop the wedding from happening, but the male child, Christ and his bride, are caught up, raptured, snatched away to God and his throne. On today's Jewish calendar, the Feast of Trumpets 2025 begins at sunset on September 22nd and ends at sunset on the 24th. At sunset on the 24th, the heavens look like this. Venus, the bright morning star, stands in the constellation of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. In Revelation, Jesus says he's the bright morning star. It is Jesus, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, who is worthy to open the scroll and its 7 seals. That opening begins the tribulation. Mars, the symbol of the red dragon, is here, exactly where you'd expect, to devour the child when it's born. And now 3-Eye Atlas has appeared. A third of the angels cast out of heaven, here with the dragon, ready to devour the male child. Timothy Alberino, in Birthright, argues that Mars was once the domain of the red dragon, Satan. Revelation 12:4. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. So here it is, Mars, the red dragon, with 3-Eye Atlas, on the eve of the Jubilee year and the tribulation, waiting to devour the child. But there's a problem. When the Revelation 12 sign completed in 2017, Jupiter, representing the child, was here. But in 2025, Jupiter isn't here, it's here. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up, harpazo, raptured to God and his throne. Gemini represents our heavenly wedding, which begins with the rapture. The 2 figures are twin brothers. One represents Christ based on the principal star in his head, Pollux, meaning ruler, the judge. The other figure symbolizes the bride of Christ. In Revelation 12, the bride of Christ is symbolized by the male child. At the rapture, Christ descends from heaven and snatches us away from the dragon. The story of our escape began on September 23, 2017, when Jupiter, the male child, emerged from Virgo's womb. 8 years later, just before the tribulation, the red dragon, Mars, is in position to devour the male child, and with him the third of the angels, cast out of heaven by his tail. But the dragon fails. He cannot stop the rapture. If he could, Christ could not bring judgment, and Satan could keep his rule. But the heavens on the Feast of Trumpets 2025 declare victory over the dragon. It matches Revelation 12:5. Jupiter is now in Gemini, the constellation of the wedding. Jewish weddings begin when the bridegroom comes and snatches the bride to the wedding chamber. That is the story written in the heavens. Our escape, when Christ descends and snatches us from the dragon. He takes us to God and his throne, to heaven, the wedding chamber. At the time of Christ, a Jewish wedding lasted 7 days. We will be with Christ in heaven for 7 years. The story in the heavens of our escape from the dragon, the rapture, is picture perfect on the Feast of Trumpets, just as it was told to Joshua by Jesus. On November 9th, 2020, my son and I each have 2 dreams about the rapture. In his first dream or vision, he sees an 8, and then a little while later, he sees an 888. In his next dream that night, he's in a house, and he begins to float up towards the ceiling, and then he awakens. He has no idea as to what the 8 and the 888 mean, so he looks it up on his phone. This is what he finds. 888 is the numerical value of Jesus in Greek. 8 is the number of new beginnings. It will be exactly 8 years to the day from the Revelation 12 sign to the Feast of Trumpets 2025. The story of our escape from the red dragon also completes on the Feast of Trumpets. In his second dream, he's floating up. Who is he floating up to meet? 888, Jesus. A pretty straightforward interpretation. In my first dream, I'm in some kind of safari theme park. As I'm traveling through the park, there are rapture soon signs everywhere. In the dream, I'm thinking, we're going to be raptured out before we get to the end of the tour. This year, for the first time ever, we are seeing thousands of people posting video rapture confirmations, all pointing to the Feast of Trumpets. Next dream, same night. I'm in this epic battle, like the battle in Wonder Woman that occurs on the beach. I go and retrieve 3 of the enemy's arrows. The tips of the arrow have simple markings that go the whole length on all sides. 2 of the 3 have the same markings, 1 is different. The tips of the arrows look like the obelisks found in Luxor, Egypt, with symbols on them. Washington, D.C. is set up, just like Luxor is, for a spiritual purpose. Luxor is where the deification of the pharaohs occurred. The city of Luxor was set up to incarnate the sun god Horus into Pharaoh. It involves an obelisk and a dome building. The Washington Monument is the tallest obelisk in the world, at the official height of 555 feet, 5 1/8 inches. In inches, that's 6,665.125. The intended height was most likely 6,666 inches. The accuracy of a measurement on a structure of this height can easily vary by plus or minus 1 inch. From Kathy Burns' book, Masonic and Occult Symbols Illustrated. The obelisk is a long-pointed, 4-sided shaft, the uppermost portion of which forms a pyramid. The word obelisk literally means ball shaft or ball's organ of reproduction. This should be especially shocking when we realize that we have a gigantic obelisk in our nation's capital, known as the Washington Monument. Sometime prior to the midpoint of the tribulation, the Antichrist will appear in Washington, D.C., and the satanic rituals will be performed, incarnating Satan himself into the Antichrist. The arrows are symbols of the dragon, as is the obelisk. In Revelation 12, there is a war in the heavens to prevent the rapture from occurring. In that war, the dragon and his angels are defeated by Michael and his army. When we go up, the dragon and his army will come down. They will appear on earth, coming in large alien craft. The deception begins. It wasn't the rapture, it was us. We've taken these people to another planet. to mature spiritually. They've been holding you back. You're the enlightened ones. The markings on 2 of the arrow tips are identical. One is different. Why? On the Feast of Trumpets 2025, the story found in Revelation 12, our escape from the red dragon by means of the rapture, completes. When the Revelation 12 sign completed on September 23, 2017, Jupiter was here. Today, on the Feast of Trumpets, Mars and Three-Eye Atlas are here, waiting to devour the symbol of Christ and his bride, Jupiter. That's 2 of the 3 objects. The third object is the moon. The moon is symbolic of Christ. The armies of Christ defeat the armies of the dragon. Jupiter is in the constellation of the wedding. The male child has been snatched away, raptured from the dragon, and taken to God and his throne. It looks like to me Jesus is coming on the Feast of Trumpets. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.